internet and YouTube and whoever's watching. This is Matt Orozco, and I'm joined by,
Lowell Greenblat.
hey
How's it?
now, it's
You're an
Macabre
all.
Monthly. Hey now, you're an all-star. Gotta give
Uh,
Smash Mouth some love.
sure.
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't. But
They have. They're fine.
yeah, I'm sure. I wonder how much the royalties pay. We should ask Bare Naked Ladies. I'm sure they can give us a better number on how much one song can net you. But we're not here to talk about that kind of music. We're here to talk about horror movies. And as is the standard fare with our Macabre Monthly sessions, just so happens to be Horror's Hallowed month of October, which is the spookiest of seasons. Lowell, do you have any spooky season traditions, that things that you always do every single year, not related to watching movies? We'll get there, but any sort of Halloween traditions?
Honestly, October has always been pretty stacked for me, which is strange. I used to go to New York Comic Con, but I've gone so many times that at this point, when I realize I haven't gone, I feel nothing.
Yeah,
Um, a
no
slight
FOMO.
a slight tinge sometimes when I think about all the cool stuff I could have gotten. I mean, it's like Takeshi Miike says in Hostel, you can blow all your money in there. And I know I've never been to San Diego Comic Con, and it's like 10 times bigger, but New York Comic Con is enough for me. Um, but I do go to other assorted cons and markets and stuff like the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market, which
Nice.
is in Trenton, New Jersey, and Connecticut Horror Fest, where I went this year. Excuse me. Those were back in September, and I met Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel, Annabeth Gish, and Barbara Crampton.
Wow.
It was fun. Yep.
Wow. It'd be hard to top that September.
Yeah, I got him to sign my stuff. Of course, the lines for Keith David, Ari Lehman, and C.J. Graham were like snaked around. And there were lines for the Haunting of Hill House people. I just thought they would have the biggest lines, and I'm like, why not? This is Mike frickin' Flanagan, but okay. I did not say that to him because I'd like to think that I am smart. So yeah, Comic Con, flea markets. I go away with my friends to a random, well, not random, but we go away for a weekend in October. And it's always just to like get away from it all. And it's always a different weekend, but like this is the first weekend in years where it's not during Dismember the Alamo at Alamo Draft House and not during the pandemic. So I will go to hang out with my friends, come back, and then go to Dismember the Alamo, which I haven't been to in years, which is a freaking blast.
Yeah. Do they have a lineup for Dismember the Alamo, or is it
Yeah,
just kind of
they
like
do.
show up
They,
and whatever?
no, they never tell you in advance. It's always like I think like four movies, or at least my local one does four movies, but they never tell you what it is. There are like hosts and MCs, and they give little intros, but you don't know until the title comes up on the screen. But they have like food specials that kind of hint at it.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, the screenings are always really good. The programmers at that Alamo are really great. Actually, we were talking about Night of the Creeps before. The first one I went to, it was Night of the Creeps, Basket Case from Frank Henenlotter's personal collection, Demons 2, and Society.
Wow.
And that, yeah, that's a hell of a lineup. And like
Yeah.
I hadn't seen, I vaguely heard of Society at the time, but I never saw it before. So
With the
like,
crowd. Wow.
and it's like the last movie of the night, so we're winding down, we're kind of done, but then it gets to the end of Society, and then it ends, and it's like, thank you for coming to Dismember the Alamo. Here's a free poster because you made it to the end, and then everyone's walking out like, thank you.
So that's what shunting is. That's what everyone's thinking when they first see society. Like, so that's what that word means.
Yep, the thrill of the shunt.
Well, what a great lineup. That sounds
What,
like
what about yourself? What do you do for spooky season?
it's been hard to narrow down, or sorry, to pin down some like traditions over the past few years, obviously with the pandemic, but also been kind of transient. I've been in a few different places in the past 4 years. So it just depends. We used to do, when I was in LA, Halloween Horror Nights. was always a thing to do. But the last time we went, it was kind of lackluster. Um, just like basically the same maze, just rip out the characters and put in a different movie kind of stuff.
Mhm.
We always go to, my wife and I always like to go to like one kind of haunted house or attraction or something like that. There's Blood Prison out here in Cleveland, which is, or sorry, Ohio, which is an abandoned prison. And there's
Right.
also Slaughter something at the Slaughterhouse something, and that's abandoned Slaughterhouse. So maybe check those out. Also just buying a shit ton of candy. Like like buying like all the monster cereals that I possibly can, because I know that as much as I love cereal, I really only eat it like during October, just so I can scarf down the much as much Count Chocula that they will let me. So gonna need to find a new plug because our grocery store stopped selling it already mid-October. But anyway, buying Halloween cereals and going to some sort of like haunted house slash maze. One of the ones where they just don't touch you. I don't really want to ever go to a house where I have to sign a waiver that stipulates like they're going to touch me and or like might get some sort of PTSD from it. Like that just doesn't sound interesting or not like a good time, I guess. But
That real quick, that does remind me. Occasionally, I'll go with my friend Carl to do his haunted house in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It's not his haunted house, but he's been volunteering there since high school, and during college, he like brought me there a few times, and it is absolutely amazing to be a scare actor in a haunted house. There's no touching, but like I think the people who worked on it used to work on like Universal Studios, like rides and attractions, and it's just they have an I think they have an original Chucky doll somewhere that they hid that was screen used. I don't know. Don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Anyway, the name changes from time to time, but I believe it's House in the Hollow this year, and I'm not going to get a chance to go this year, but going there is incredible. And I never really cared for haunted houses that much, but like these guys know how to do it. And it's a great time. You haven't lived until you've made an Eagles fan cry, let me tell you.
well, in that case, I've lived a few times, I think. But there is like I hopefully we will be homeowners in the next year, at which
Ooh.
point I will be able to have my turn our garage into some sort of haunted house because I actually would love to make one um just for the fun of it. But yeah, as far as going to them, I enjoy them, but I don't find them very scary. I mostly just go to see kind of what level of craftsmanship goes on.
Mhm.
There was one I went to in Phoenix. It was kind of quite fun. Most of the time it's about the atmosphere, right? If you have the right location, everything else just gets a little bit spookier. But we'll try and get to one and we'll see what these Midwest haunts are like. I'm sure they're more Midwest. But with that, we have a pretty big discussion, or given that it's Halloween month and that it's the spooky season and all, include all of the things we've used to describe the fall season as horror fans. Got a couple double trouble of an episode here, which is we're going to cover Hulu's recently released last Friday Hellraiser entry, and then we're going to give our top three movies that we like to watch during the spooky season. But before we get into that, what have you been watching, Lowell?
Well, let me look at my letterbox list
Hey now,
for my 31 scares of Halloween. I say
are you
that
doing
like,
a list? Because I was actually
what?
going to ask you this. Like, are you doing a 31 days of watches? And if so,
Oh, I've
is
done that
there
for years. Yeah.
what's your rhyme reason? Do you have one?
Oh no, I don't have one. I just log the horror movies that I've seen in the month of October. And I try to do one a day, but sometimes you can't. So you skip a day, you do two, maybe you
Make it up on
stack.
the back end.
Yeah, yeah. But you hit 31 and you always wind up hitting more. So maybe, you want to leave one or two off. Because maybe you put Halloween 5 every year because you try, you try and you try and you try, but it's just going to let you down.
Like an
Anyway,
abusive relationship.
yep, yep. Just like Wish I could quit you. So I'll just tell you so far, with some overlap for some of my favorites of 2022 so far, because oh my god, 2022 is like, it's only October, and it's like, it's not quite 1982 levels, but like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So I've got Scream, that's Scream 5 or 5 Cream.
Five
The
cream.
Fog, the original, X, the 1972 Tales from the Crypt, which I've never seen before, which was a hoot. Death Becomes Her, which I also never
Love
saw
that.
before. It's so great. I'm like, how did I miss this?
So much camp.
Yeah. Starry Eyes, Army of Darkness, the new Hellraiser, and I watched Deadstream again because it's freaking great.
Yes, Deadstream, easily a top 10 for 2022
Oh yeah.
without question. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I do not like found footage movies, generally speaking. I find the aesthetic to be overdone and wrought with the most unoriginal ideas replicated over endlessly. But I was so surprised by Deadstream, and I think a lot of it's because I didn't read anything about it. You told me it was good. You just told me to watch it. That's all I took. And man, what a fun! Like, I laughed. I genuinely got a few jumps out of it. I was I just love that they went there on sometimes. Like, it's like, okay, usually you see that a cutaway or it's not going to get as weird as you think it is, and it did get as
No,
weird as
it
I
goes
wanted it
there.
to.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that for it.
And it's I mean, found footage movies are difficult, horror comedies are difficult, and this one is both, and it succeeds.
Yeah,
Like,
peanut
it's
butter in my chocolate.
yeah, just an absolute home run. And I reviewed it for Macabre Daily, and I interviewed the directors and the star slash director. It's written and directed by a couple, Vanessa and Joseph Winter. Joseph played Sean, the main character of the film. So I talked to them for like 15 minutes, and that's forthcoming on the site. That was a lot of fun. But I was telling people it comes out October 6th, which is Thursday. So watch it before you open your lament configuration, because you don't want this one to get lost in the deluge of
No.
October.
And it was a good reminder too that, like, I've been neglecting the Shudder originals for a couple of months. So I have a pretty significant backlog of things to go and watch, which is kind of nice since there tends to be, I don't know about you, but ebbs and flows of what is on streaming. Sometimes I find there's a lot that I want. Sometimes there's very little. So been taking some notes on some things I need to watch, but heavy standing for Deadstream over here. Of any of those that you've watched so far, like, what did you think of Tales from the Crypt, the original?
It was a lot of fun. It kind of felt like a colorized British Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Like, and they took stories from the Tales from the Crypt comics, and the show itself, like the Tales from the Crypt that we know and love, they've adapted, I think, every Tales from the Crypt comic. So there was like overlap, like, and it was so weird to see 70s British versions of iconic Tales from the Crypt episodes, because they're pulling from the same source material. Like All Through the House with Joan Collins, the Home for the Blind, like that was crazy. I'm like, wow, this is really fun and dark and messed up. I'm surprised I didn't see it till now, but it was a lot of fun.
Vault of Horror is quite good as well if you're looking to continue the trend.
Oh, that's the other one, right?
Yeah. It's I mean, listen, any anthology movie, if more than half of the stories are worthwhile, then you've got yourself a win as far as I'm concerned. And between the both of those movies, they're pretty solid. I've got a lot of new movies I've seen. So first up is Barbarian.
We talked about Barbarian last time. I totally forgot.
I don't think we did, only because you might have seen it, but I hadn't seen it until recently.
Okay.
I liked Barbarian quite a bit, but I gotta say, this is my little soapbox for today. The internet needs to stop hyping things up just beyond like, it's the expectation that are being set is so high by hype that it's almost impossible to be met. And I am, in my attempt to dodge some of this hype, I try and wait a few weeks for movies to either settle down or like for me to forget about them, whatever. And I really liked Barbarian. But the more I think about it, and the more I heard other people's opinions of it, the more I realized, one, I don't think this movie is as clever as everyone thinks it is. And after hearing the director and writer talk about it, he, in his writing process specifically, which was very much like, I'll make it up as I go along. So I enjoyed it. I'm really glad it's making heaps of money. That's the most gratifying aspect of all of this, I think, is that even if you don't like a movie, which we'll talk about in just a moment, at least it's
Oh,
making money. Which brings me to Mr. Harrigan's phone.
I haven't
Um,
seen it yet, but
don't, yeah,
yeah,
don't.
what I've heard, it's one of those like I'll get around to it, but I'm not in a rush.
I never read the short story, but that aside, what a meandering, pointless movie that was. And I genuinely don't understand what they were trying to do, making it, because of how boring it is and how little it actually offers as far as like a plot that actually goes somewhere. So heavy, like all the bad things you've probably seen about it online, they're all true and then some. Uh, saw the Munsters, which
Still trying, but
I
that's
liked it. I didn't love it. I didn't love
no
it.
listen, no shame against people who liked or loved it. I started to watch it and I just got the sense that Rob Zombie was making it just for him. And if you happen to enjoy it as well, that's great. But it's really it felt like something that he needed to do in order to move on with his life, kind of like his Gangs of New York,
Yeah.
if you will. Though I love Gangs of New York, but I will finish it because it's Rob Zombie, but I'm like, look, I'm happy for you, Rob. I really am. Like, I know this is a labor of love. You can tell. And there's something to be said about him keeping all the corny humor from the time the show came out. Just not for me.
Yeah. I think that there's a part of me that probably thinks underdog syndrome has hit me pretty hard with it, and that all of the maligning that the film got has actually made me think differently, like almost give it an advantage in my watching it. But my ultimate takeaway was he should have just made a limited series of just doing 6 30-minute episodes of the Munsters, because the best parts about it are when he's just doing what the Munsters show used to do. And I wasn't the world's biggest Munsters fan, but I used to watch it pretty regularly on like Nick at Night and TV Land and those various syndicated channels. And it's like Adam's Family, but without the darkness. Like it's just a not like a non macabre version of the Adams Family. And so when it's doing that best is when it's hilarious. There's parts with Daniel Roebuck playing Grandpa Munster who are like, this is perfect. Like this is exactly what. And like in that way, the camp works. They're but trying to wrap a story around it, an origin story at that, is always really tough when an origin isn't necessary. So I understand people's criticisms. I don't necessarily think they're all valid. It is a bit longer than it needs to be, just like it's clocking it at almost 2 hours. That's just too much. And
Yeah.
maybe, like, again, if you would have done this in little 30-minute, 20-minute episodes like the TV show was, I actually think it would have been a lot more successful. But that said, I do agree that it sounds like this is something he needed to get off his chest. And he's done that. And he hopefully will get something else from him. Before I get to the movie, I'll probably spend the most time talking about that isn't our main movie. Did check another one called Inheritance, which was on Netflix with Simon Pegg. It's not
Oh,
good.
I think I saw a trailer for it. And I'm like, what's going on here? But I didn't. Wasn't interested.
Yeah, it just reminds me of like the movies that Cinemax would make just to like put on stuff between like 9 p.m. and like 1 a.m. It's like, and there's no like, and it doesn't even have the lurid TNA that those movies had. It just has like the really strange, overly confused and weird plot. But there's worse ways to kill 90 minutes, I guess. What I did
This
see
is
though, which took up way too much of my time, was Terrifier 2. And I want to pause this by saying I seem to be in the minority here in that everyone seems to love this fucking movie. But you know what? It's stupid. It is so fucking bad in so many ways. And I give a lot of credit for the visual effects, but it's just not, like, I'm sorry, it's just not a good movie. Nothing about it is good. people that say it's good are just high on the theater experience of seeing a movie like that in the theater with other people. It's like the same effect you get when you go to a concert and you hear a band that you didn't really like, but all of a sudden you're singing along. It's because you're around other people and they're enjoying it too. And it's hard to be like the one person not enjoying it. I don't think anyone's throwing up and passing out in the theater because of it. It's just like, it's just not that realistic. It's just silly. So if you want to see 2 hours and 18 minutes of just a bunch of gore gags, like, you might enjoy it, but it's just so long. It's so long and unfocused and unnecessary.
No slasher movie should be over 2 hours. Even Scream 2 is like 2 hours and 1 minute. And even that's pushing it a little bit. Like, I love Scream 2, but there's a lot of movie there. I can't imagine what a 2 hour plus slasher film is like.
And you can feel it in Scream 2. Like, you can feel like once like the first act ends, like the beginning of the second act is a bit of a slog, even though the characters were like, the thing that saves Scream 2 is that the characters are really interesting. You already like them. And in this way, like Terrifier 2 tries to introduce characters which are, you know, credit where credit's due, they are better developed than the last one. But that's kind of like saying, oh, okay, well, I colored within the lines one more drawing this time, but the entire book's still full of a mess. Because like this whole thing just reeks of someone not being told no. Like said, oh, is that a good idea? Yeah, put it in there. And it's the kitchen sink of horror movies, and that it just does everything. I can't imagine there's much that didn't get put in the movie. And by the end, and I'm not going to ruin anything about it, but I will just say that if there was an award for most unearned ending in a movie of 2022, it would 110% go to Terrifier 2. Um, it's just not good. But that said, their good redeeming thing is Art's still great. He's definitely a horror icon. But 2 hours and 18 minutes of it, no. I'm sorry. It's just that's not good. But anyway, come at me, internet, because fuck that movie.
Before we go any further, can we double back to Barbarian just a little bit? We didn't actually get to talk about it. Yeah, like the hype on it is a little nuts, and I loved it. Like, it's in my top 10 for this year so far. It's great, but still, even with that, everyone's just losing their minds over it, and I'm still like, all right, let's just, yeah, it is great. There's an actor who shows up. There's several actors who show up who are nice surprises and great additions. And I love what they did with it. In the light of day, some of it doesn't make sense, but that's okay. Bill Skarsgård, perfect casting.
Yeah.
That, like, once they got him, that was a coup. Without ruining anything, but once you see the movie, you'll know what I mean. And it's some great original horror. I really liked it. And I also agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. It definitely deserves all of its flowers. So I think that there is, and I'm glad that it gets people out to go see horror. But what I end up finding being the case, and this is where I put on my gatekeeping, my punk rock gatekeeping hat from back in high school, which is like, it's a horror movie for people that aren't into horror. Like, all of the things that people say they're surprised about, or like that are like shocking, I'm like, has no one seen, like, I'm not, yeah, we're not gonna go down that path.
Yeah,
but like there are plenty of movies.
The people who love it have not seen a lot of horror movies, and hopefully this opens the door for them. Like, I'm watching the Midnight Club now, and I like it, but it feels like entry level for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people who will grow up to love horror say that it started with Midnight Club as one of the first things, and that's cool.
Yeah,
but watch more horror. That's all.
That,
I loved it, but yep.
And it's almost funny. Like, Barbarian is like what the mainstream wants, what the perfect mainstream horror movie might be, and Terrifier 2 is what I think people who don't watch horror movies and hate them think horror movies are. It's like the absolute bottom rung of horror. But to that end, like, there's a lot that doesn't, like, the more you think about Barbarian, the less of it makes sense. And there's so much about it in every, like, there's a whole part about, there's a whole flashback that to me is like so absolutely unnecessary.
I did it. even though it doesn't make sense, some of it in the long run, like I needed it to know what, because I wasn't gonna get to some of those conclusions, but I digress.
And there are some, like, I've heard there's like ties to like themes. There's some thematic tying that's going on. I just don't buy it. Like, I just don't think the movie's that smart. I don't think that that was that well thought out, about the subtext of like what people are saying it's trying to speak to. There are some very good inversions of genre tropes which are really enjoyable, particularly in the first act. Like, there's a lot of like, oh yeah, that's exactly what a rational person would do, and like that's exactly how the situation should be treated, not like how a typical horror movie goes. But to that end, like, I don't think you get points for doing something like pedestrian. I think you get points for like blowing things out of the water. And to me, like, the surprise, like, once you see that movie, there's not a lot to go back to. There's not a lot of reason to go back to it aside from just, oh, it's been a few years, and like see it again, and maybe the surprise is fresh. But I don't know. I don't want to. I actually did like it quite a bit, even though it sounds like I didn't. I just also get really like, I think the hype that surrounds these movies ends up doing it such a disservice because they're good without the hype. But in this case, the hype has made it. I think it's still in theaters, as of this recording, which is pretty impressive, considering that most movies don't even stick around for the full month nowadays. So, yeah, credit where credit's due. Interestingly enough, the writer director is like not a big horror fan. Like, it's I think it's a success by accident.
Yeah, I'll see what else he does. I mean, he's got my money, but
For sure.
yeah.
For sure. If he makes another horror movie, even not a horror movie, I'll check it out. And there are some really great appearances that shouldn't be spoiled, but are just really fun. One particular one, he's just a gem. I'll just leave it there. He's a gem.
I'll just say, without ruining anything, the tape measure is one of the funniest parts of the entire year. I'm just like, and it just keeps going like a tape measure. So,
and genuinely funny. Like, there are like, I think it can't be understated how effective both Deadstream and Barbarian are at being legitimately horror movies and legitimately funny in between. Whereas
absolutely.
most horror comedies tend to err more to the side of, I'm going to be funny with a little bit of horror. This is squarely like, this is a horror movie, but we've actually found some ways to bring in some genuine laughs that are germane to what's happening and the situation and the characters within them. So kudos to good writing.
And both heavily influenced by Sam Raimi for the better. Like, they're, it's because it's easy to rip off Sam Raimi and to just take exactly what he's doing, but they don't. They like, you can tell they're inspired by it and they make it their own, and that's great to see.
I'm going to go out there and say that The Evil Dead might be the most influential horror movie of two horror filmmakers of all time.
Yeah,
of our current roster of filmmakers. Like, I'm kind of excusing the Joe Dantes and the Mick Garrises and the John Landises of the world for the moment.
Evil Dead makes people think they can go to a cabin in the woods with their friends and make a classic.
Yes.
And maybe they can't, but they will try because of Evil Dead.
And there's an entire line of movies now. Visual Vengeance is a label that puts out only shot on video, and like almost all of their releases are influenced by the Evil Dead. So it just goes to show you that it does elicit that response in people, is that I can do that. Let me go grab the video camera that we used on our vacation in '82, and I'm gonna go make some art. So highly recommend those two movies, though, especially if you're looking for something to see in the theater and something to work on streaming. And as folks may or may not know at this point, Lowell and I both write for a website called Macabre Daily. Got a few news stories up today. So if you're following along, we are doing Spooky Staff picks. So check those out. But Terrifier 2, $1.2 million at the box office.
I don't even think that's good anymore post-pandemic in a single night. I guess for a movie like this, but I don't know.
Well, I don't know enough about the production here to be to say I have firm knowledge. But what I do know is that I'm pretty sure the budget was $250,000. I think that's what they raised on Kickstarter.
Oh, nice.
So, and considering that the film only played on like think one screening, like they did like one screen a day or something like that for the weekend. So it's pretty impressive. Again, I just think that I'd be really interested to see how people actually enjoy going back and watching this when it comes out on video, because when you see watching something in a theater with other people, particularly a movie like this, can absolutely make a 2 hour and 18-minute runtime feel much faster. But watching it at home, I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? This keeps going. So congratulations though to the production team behind this, because that's pretty impressive to quadruple your budget in one weekend. And that surely means we're going to be getting a third one, I imagine. And that probably also means it's going to be getting more money, which probably means more vaginal sawing. Who knows? You've never seen the Terrifier movies, have you?
I know about the vaginal sawing, but I know nothing about the second one. Yeah, no, I don't. I haven't. I don't really know that much.
Have you ever seen a movie called Evil Ed? It's like a Swedish or Nordic movie.
No, I've heard of it. I think it's an Arrow release. I don't know, but no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so like the whole premise is this guy is like a movie editor, and like he has to edit these gnarly horror movies and they drive him insane. The movies that he's editing are like what terrify. It's like Damien Leone watched that movie and was like, oh, we should make the movie in the movie. And that's what Terrifier is. It's just like nastiness to be nasty. And like, I don't even, a lot of people say, oh, you didn't like it because you're a prude. Go fuck yourself, first of all. Because like, I love my horror disgusting and grisly and violent just as much as the next depraved individual. But I also like more than just meat. I want a little bone, you know, I need a little more than the blood and the carnage.
Yeah. Motherfucker, I sat through Speak No Evil. Don't talk to me. I had friends who asked me for horror movie recommendations the other day, and I was like, be careful, because I could recommend movies that would ruin your life.
I used to do something for and it's true, because there are some movies like that I'm embarrassed that I own. But there, like, I used to do a list for my non-Macabre Daily job where I would make horror movie recommendations. I used to have a section that was if you're for the for the for the adventurous. And I still wouldn't put movies like a Serbian film in there, because I don't even think I think that goes beyond like what any rational person would watch. But I did put something like Martyrs in there, which, you know, where violence has somewhat of a point. But yeah, good for this movie, I guess. So Chucky season 2 premiered. You can watch the first episode for free. I have not caught this yet. Have you?
Yeah. Seems promising. Yeah, I don't know. It feels just like the first season. It's like the same quality, because it picks up pretty much where it left off, and then there's a jump, but there's a there. It's interesting watching Don Mancini write for TV. Yeah, I know he wrote for Hannibal, but like to do this as like his own show, I'm always like, where's he gonna go with this? And it's also it's always interesting. So, you know, but I'm not waiting on bated breath for the next episode, which is kind of strange, because I remember when Ash versus Evil Dead came out, and I was like, just hook it to my veins. I can't believe this is happening. And now I'm just like, all right, new Chucky, cool. So, but yeah, if you like the first season, what I've seen so far, still good.
I do. I feel like though, so you're so right about Ash versus Evil Dead, but I was late to the party on that one just because I didn't want to sign up for a Star subscription. But it was because we hadn't seen that character of Ash in so long, and it was just like Bruce Campbell like just flips a switch and he's Ash. Like it's not like
No
it's
kidding.
not. Yeah, there's no effort from him as far as, well, I take that back. What I mean more is it's so organic for him now to do that it was just nice to see that hasn't changed, and it was just so endearing because it took everything you loved about Ash and Army of Darkness and just made him like fatter and like more hilarious, but still maintain like the absurdity of the gore.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely
Oh,
gonna check this out
yeah.
probably this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Speaking of Evil Dead, Evil Dead Rise. So I'm pretty sure this was supposed to come out this month, wasn't it?
Or this year at least, but it was
Yeah.
supposed to go right to HBO Max, but apparently did so well it's going to go right to theaters now. So
I don't
that
buy it.
peaked before, and now it has doubly peaked. Is that the?
Yeah.
I'm more. Yeah, cool.
Peaking,
More,
doubly peaking.
yeah, more theatrical Evil Dead. Maybe a new map for the video game. I don't know, but yeah, as long as it's good, I'll be there.
Yeah, I mean I'm skeptical as usual because I just yeah, I
I
feel like the
know it's
Evil Dead show was so good at capturing like what Raimi like what the essence of an Evil Dead movie is. It's not the original. Like I look at the Evil Dead as almost being a totally separate movie from its sequels because of how tonally different it is. But I feel like peak Evil Dead like capture that in Ash versus the Evil Dead. So I'm just wondering what direction they take with this, since it's a whole new story too. Who
mm.
knows?
And I like
But
the Evil Dead remake, which I wasn't sure I would because that story has been cannibalized over and over and over again. But if someone who's not Sam Raimi can make a great Evil Dead movie, and like directors can make great slices of Evil Dead every week, then I'm a little more open to seeing what someone else can do with it.
yeah, I do like the idea. This is kind of going to be like, I always think that movies that are set in apartment buildings have high potential because that's such a great landscape for horror.
Mm-hmm.
Like Wreck was so much fun because of just the like the strangeness of leveling in the floors. But yeah, I mean, will I see it in theaters to support the cause? Absolutely. And I hope it's good, but I'm going to still go in with my expectations being squarely planted at if
Yeah,
this is entertaining, then it's a win.
yeah, lower them stakes.
Yes, lower. They are lower now. How do you feel about Violent Night, David Harbour?
I watched the trailer and it doesn't feel like a real movie. It feels
No.
like a Funny or Die sketch, but a really great Funny or Die sketch. So I feel like I need to see it like just to know what it's gonna be. And like when they say it's Santa Claus versus terrorists, I'm thinking it's like a department store Santa, but no, the trailer goes out of its way to say this is actually Santa Claus fighting terrorists. So great, I'm there. Sign me up.
Honestly, I wish this was the movie that the Christmas Chronicles was supposed to be. Like, if the Christmas Chronicles had this level of violence, it would have been a much better movie.
Well,
And
that was
Kurt
a
Russell.
fantasy, but all
Yeah,
right.
I know, but like, like I look. First of all, this does look like a movie that only exists on paper, in someone's head. And the trailer is a lot of fun. But when I saw like from the producers of like Nobody and some other and Bullet Train, I'm like, okay, so I know exactly what kind of movie this is going to be. It's over the top action with snarky humor. It's going to be like highly choreographed and lots of blood. So if that's what it is, sign me up. Now the whole real Santa, like him playing a real Santa in this, as long as they don't take it as seriously as I don't think it is, hey, we got a lot to work with. But I'm pretty sure this is the movie that was in Scrooged, wasn't it? Like,
Out with Lee Majors,
yeah, I like
Bloody
there's
Rain.
a yeah, something like that. I mean, it almost reminds me of like a Simpsons skit where like what's the guy who yeah, McBain, but like McBain does Santa.
Yeah,
But good for David Harbour for finding roles that continue to keep him buff and kicking ass
yeah.
between Stranger Things seasons. So, and I love some holiday horror. I'm sure once we get closer to Christmas, we will do our holiday horror episode because I do find Christmas horror particularly to be quite enjoyable, if highly uneven.
Yeah.
Speaking of video games, Dead Space. Did you play the original Dead Space game?
No, but I heard they were great, and I've always been curious. So I think just like I did with Alan Wake, when the remake comes out, I'll pick it up and see how it goes.
I'm pretty excited about this. The first Dead Space is kind of like what would happen if you had a really cool carpenter who fought aliens. Best way to describe the weapons in that game is like this looks like something a carpenter would use. But pretty good tension. And given the next generation graphics that we have nowadays. What a time to be alive. I'm sure this is going to look goopy as all hell. So yeah, and considering I just picked up a Steam Deck a couple of weeks ago, um, going to the bathroom's never going to be the same again. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I'm eagerly looking forward to this one. But not till next year. So womp womp.
Okay.
And our last bit of news: the Crow reboot with our buddy Bill Skarsgård as Rat Production. I feel like there's been very little talked about this movie, and that's probably a good thing.
Yes, I agree, but The Crow is not a horror movie. I feel like I'm gonna be saying this forever and ever and ever. Like, I love The Crow. It's one of my favorite, like, yeah, I can say it's one of my favorite films if I'm doing the top 10. It's just great, but he's not a boogeyman. It's just a darker Kill Bill. And like, I just bring this up because I feel like Eric Draven gets lumped in a lot with like, with boogeymen. Like his action figure was part of the movie Maniacs line. And I went to a 20th anniversary screening of it that was hosted by Fangoria. And I'm like, it's great that I'm going to this screening, but like, why Fangoria? And yeah, I guess he does come back from the dead, but like, it's, you're rooting for him. He's like, he's fighting for love. And that's my rant. Look, I'm going to see this because I can't not see this, but just, it's not a horror movie.
Yeah, I struggle with this too because I love The Crow, but you're right. Like as much as I want it to be a horror movie too, like it takes place on Halloween. Like it's a great Halloween movie, but it's not a horror movie.
I
So does it?
always forget that part, honestly. Like it's not like I always forget Devil's Night is the night before Halloween because that's really the only like it they had the Devil's Night in there for the Devil's Night of it. They don't need nor do they use any of the Halloween any Halloweenisms. It doesn't feel like a Halloween film to me. It's just like a dark superhero movie with incredible production design.
Yeah.
Like I mean, we can have our own conversation on The Crow, but like I love that it's a simple story in an incredible world that looks grounded and out there at the same time.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with the source material either on The Crow, so I don't know if the comics had more of like a horror edge to them. But
no, not really. I will say I have the comic and it's great, but I think the '94 movie is a great adaptation of it. So if they're going back to the source material for the new film, I kind of wonder what that will be like because I remember the comic is very episodic. But I'll see. Give me more Crow.
Yeah, I'll watch it. I mean, I've never seen the sequels, but I did just rewatch the Brandon Lee version, and bittersweet because he's just so great in that role. And there's just a lot. It's just a fun, dark movie. Like for as dark as it's almost like if Batman minus the weird cape, like it's just got that kind of vibe to it. Like it looks like Gotham City in so many ways.
Yeah, like a grounded Gotham City. And just all the Crow films have great soundtracks. I think except that last one with Edward Furlong. You can skip that. Well, okay. The original is really the only good one. The others are curiosities. There's good stuff in them, but none of them is like a top to bottom good film.
Yeah. That's fair. Well, maybe I'll check them out. But I will definitely be seeing this despite it all. And I did splurge on a Sideshow Collectibles Crow hot toy that should be coming in any day now. So I have no self-control is what I'm trying to say. But that's the news for now, bringing us to our dual main events. Shall we start with Hulu's Hellraiser?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like it wasn't until I saw the first picture of Jamie Clayton as Pinhead like a month ago where I was like, oh shit, this is actually happening. Yeah. And then it was on my TV and I watched it on my couch. Still kind of can't believe it. I've never been the biggest Hellraiser fan, just because the series has been so kind of uneven. Also, I watched them out of order. And by the way, I'm just talking about the first four because after Bloodline, none of that shit matters. Those are just repurposed scripts. Um,
That'd be great.
Apologies to Gary J. Tunnicliffe. He cared, but no one else did. But I watched the third one first, and I thought in my mind that's what Hellraiser is, but that's really the Freddy Kruegerification of Hellraiser.
Yes.
And then I watched 1 and 2 back to back on the USA Network. So watching it on basic cable means that everything gets cut out. I did not know Jesus Wept until I was in college. So it kind of colored it for me a little bit. And I mean, the first two are really good, even if I'm not entirely sure what's happening in the second one. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, there are a lot of rules in these movies, which they have to be because, you know, they're demons of order. You know, like you look at Pinhead's face, like each one of those pins is there in a very specific place. They are about order and what you can and can't do. And all that said, even though I wasn't entirely sure what the new mythos was with the new film, from time to time, I feel like I needed to bring up the Wikipedia page. Anyway, it's all a long-winded way of saying I think this might be my favorite Hellraiser film. And you know, it's not a perfect film. It's not directed by Clive Barker. There's so much Clive Barker in it, which is great. But one of my problems with the earlier films, I shouldn't say problems, but the things that I thought were kind of dragging were, you know, you had this story of Frank and what's her name? Julia. Thank you. You have this story of these two people. It was a love story I never really got into, but I wanted to see where it goes. Skinless man in an attic. But whenever the Cenobites came in, they just sucked the air out of the room because instantly it's like the movie just stops and you're like, what am I looking at? I want to spend all my time with these people, you know, like forget Frank, like what, you know, I want to see the sights that they want to show me. Which, you know, that's what the Weinsteins wanted to do with the later films, and that's what they did. But I feel like once that happened, for me, an uncultured teenager watching these, I was like, can we go back to the priest with the leather for a second? And I feel like the new film handled that really well because they are still the monsters, but they are still, you know, the angels and the demons and the creatures that you can't kill, you know, like they're just eternal. They're here to pass the box along from one person to the next. And I, without ruining anything, I've referred to this as Nancy Reagan's Hellraiser. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
You get what I?
It's part of my problem with it.
Real? Oh, but wait. Let's see if we're talking about the same thing because
we're talking about the real, like the conclusion of the movie, like where
the choice. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Choice. I like just.
It reminds me of the Dave Chappelle skit where he's talking about his friend Chip, and he gets pulled over, and he's like, "You know how fast you were going?" And he's like, "I don't know." He's like, 85. He's like, "I didn't know I couldn't do that." It's like, I don't know.
Okay,
but continue.
I mean, we can get into spoilers if you want, but I was very impressed with it. I would like to see more movies with different. If these movies are all heading to a choice, then let's see what the different choices are because we've seen a few of them already, and there's apparently a few that you can pick from, which I thought was interesting. Also, I did absolutely love that, like, you know, the goal of the person who gets the lament the configuration, whatever it is all like it's always kind of vague. It's just like they're searching for new sensations. But in this film, it's like that, you know, it's Leviathan. You know, it's like they are specifically looking for something very specific. And I thought that was an improvement upon the films. But anyway, that's my long-winded thing. And go ahead.
I did not. I liked it. I liked it. I did not love it.
Okay.
And I am a diehard like Hellraiser fan. Like to me,
Okay.
and I agree with you about the first four being like the most important movies. The rest of them, there's always like 5 minutes of redeeming quality in all but like two of them. But
Mhm.
getting to that 5 minutes is such a slog, and it's basically watching like the worst versions of like Kiss the Girls or Seven ripoffs you've ever seen to get there.
And none
So
of the Hellraiser movies. They're just script that were just
yeah,
that, it's like Doug Bradley shows up for 2 days, makes his nut, and goes home. And that's probably the 5 minutes of each film that you're talking about, if I were to guess. So
pretty much. Like there's one, I forget what entry it is, that there's like it goes, there's some like again, they vary in quality, some being just marginally better than others, but that's kind of like saying, oh wow, I only tripped 4 times instead of 3 today. So but what but the thing about the first Hellraiser for me is that it's a movie that for me gets better every single time I watch it because of how well it manages what is essentially like a misdirection of a story. Like the whole point that Pinhead is the front and center of this movie, but he's in it for the Cenobites are in it for less than 8 minutes
mhm.
of the movie. It's because it's not. They are a means. They are a constant in this world that Clive Barker's created, and they are just waiting to be called. And so, what people get wrong about Hellraiser movies is that yes, it is about the Cenobites, but it is about who is calling the Cenobites. And so,
Yeah.
to some extent, what this new one does quite well is it does create somewhat of a story structure around why are people going after, like, why, how do we get from normal world to Cenobites entering it? There's a decent explanation. And what the first one does so well for me, and even the second one to some extent, is it doesn't explain much. That it explains the things that you need to know in order to continue going along with it, but it doesn't explain so much that it gives you backstory. And Hellraiser 2 kind of goes into this a bit with like how Pinhead becomes Pinhead, but it doesn't even tell you like explicitly. It just tells you, yeah, this guy used to be like you, and then he made some choices. And what is frustrating about this one, to me at least, is it is it does it it's trying so hard to be a good Hellraiser movie, but it's also trying to appeal to people that don't know anything about Hellraiser. And that's where I think movies like this get into trouble, is that they start explaining a lot of things and exploring mythology that doesn't exist, like the whole different configurations of the box. Like that doesn't make sense. Like that doesn't like
I thought that was cool, but like save that for a sequel. But I
yeah.
guess it would. That's with the dual choices at the end. You did kind of need that, but yeah, like it throws a lot at you.
I mean, we can spoil this thing because people can watch it on Hulu for free 93. So like I mean that choice at the end, the no, I'm not going to. Fuck out of here. Like that's the whole point of
No,
the
that's but no. See, okay, and I say you're the bigger Hellraiser fan than me, but I just love. First of all, that echoes the original ending of Nightmare on Elm Street, which I do love, maybe inadvertently. But I just love that, like, yeah, that's how you walk away from this, by literally walking away from this, by not wanting, by just like being okay with being a human being who feels real things. And especially coming from a drug addict, I was like,
the
okay,
drug
like
addict stuff is so played out for me though. Like it is.
it was for me until the end, like until it ended, and I thought about it, and I will say that like I was enjoying it, and then I'm like, well, how are they going to wrap this up? And then that happens, and I was like, holy shit, like that feels new and original. I mean, you can't do that every time if you make more of these, but for a Hellraiser film, I was like, all right.
I guess it takes the high road when there is no high road. Like that's the part that bugs me, is like the whole point of these movies is that morally ambiguous people are trying to find more morally ambiguous things to do. And at no point is Riley ever equipped to outsmart anybody. Like that's the thing too, is like she's not a great protagonist in a lot of ways. Like all of the story, like she's a red herring for this whole billionaire plot, which is so shoehorned in at the end. Like if I think about this movie and plot, it is the first two Hellraiser movies squished together. Whereas Hellraiser 1 was about someone who uses somebody else to bring themselves back from oblivion. Hellraiser 2 is about someone finding is in that same pursuit, but who wants to go farther and wants to become them, and in turn does. So it's like both those movies in the same movie. But the problem is when you squish those two things together, you lose so much of what happens in between them that makes them interesting. And what what I there's just so like there's so much that felt Clive Barker wasn't Clive Barker. There's no the look of the Cenobites, I think, looks really interesting, but it has this problem where everything's so shiny. And I don't know if you've ever seen real like flesh and guts before, but that's not like it's not that clean, it's not that precise. And I realize the aesthetic of beauty and horror and like body modification being the inspiration, but as far as like establishing something that like evokes something from you as a viewer, all it does, it's almost looks like you're watching a fashion show and less watching like a horror movie. But the Cenobites were actually the best part. Like they were like, to their credit, like the Cenobites were well done. Jamie Clayton actually slays as the priest. Like she's just
absolutely. I wish they were more well lit, because I feel like there was a lot of design that we missed. I mean, they don't have to be bright, but I'm constantly looking like, what is happening over here?
Yes,
but
it does have that like way too
yeah.
dark color palette,
Yeah.
which is common nowadays.
Yeah.
But and so as much as I enjoyed the overall experience, what ended up sticking with me the most is that this is trying so hard to meet everyone's needs. And I think that's what ultimately interferes with someone like me enjoying it, is like, as a Hellraiser fan, you either make a Hellraiser movie or you don't. Like the examples of don't is like everything after Bloodline. Like those were not Hellraiser movies, and they tried to be. And then everything before that, like there's a sensuality that also wasn't present in this entry. Like there's like these Cenobites are, I don't want to call it attractive, but like there's the only sexuality that permeates through this movie comes from the look of the Cenobites. Nothing else about like in the first one, Julie, it's all about the two most fucked up people you could ever imagine falling in love, and what would happen, what would the other one do to bring the other one back from the dead. That's the premise of the movie. It just so happens the mechanism by which Frank returns is through the Cenobites and the box.
Well, it's interesting because that first Hellraiser movie is horny, and this one kind of isn't. There is
half-mast. It's half-mast.
Yeah, it's the pills winding down. But it's, and like, if you told me like, you want to redo Hellraiser but just make it less horny, and be like, I mean, is that really Hellraiser? But it kind of is. I mean, like it's weird if at first that the Cenobites weren't in black leather, but really if they showed up in black leather, it'd just be like, oh, I guess we're doing this again. I don't know. Or that was like, what they tried to do was have a new look, but still have them be Cenobites. And I mean, Pinhead's flesh dress it's fantastic. I didn't get a good look at some of the others, but like, I mean, I do kind of like the creepy undead cyborg look. Like it works for me.
And I do think that the designs are really great. Like I think that they're very much different enough from the original ones to stand on their own, but also obviously paying enough homage, like with the Chatterer and obviously the pins. And like the best part about this new one is the last 20 minutes when it goes into full Hellraiser 2 Hellbound territory. Like it's pretty much the exact same ending. And that's the part that like is frustrating, is like it took you an hour and 40 minutes to get to the best 20 minutes of this movie. And not to mention, the best part of a Hellraiser movie, aside from the Cenobites, is seeing how they take out the people that call them. And it almost all of the kills happen off screen. And you have such an opportunity in the first set piece in the beginning. That's your defining moment to set the tone. And it almost explicitly tells you what kind of movie it's going to be by not showing you that kill. It's like, we're going to make Hellraiser for Hulu. And I think that ultimately, I think that they made a good movie with what they had, but I also think that they were trying to do too much with it. And that only brings me to my conclusion on this, is that if you want to make a really good Hellraiser movie, there's three things that need to happen. It needs to be a small contained story, meaning not a lot of characters in not many locations. You need to show the Cenobites just enough where you can get a sense of their presence, but not enough to the point where it's like a slasher movie where you see them too much. Like, to bring this back to something that, to bring it back to my favorite movie of the week, Terrifier 2 has the same problem, is like the opposite problem of the first Hellraiser, that there's just too much art. It's like, I get it. This guy's a scary clown. But then the third thing you need is like, you need to see some really outstandingly gruesome death, because the whole point of like what this movie misses, it kind of, and it almost, it touches the tip of it with this billionaire angle, is like, the only people that ever meet the Cenobites are the people that are looking for them. The only people that look for them are the most fucked up people that you can possibly imagine, because they are the ones who, body modify to the point where they don't feel pain. They're the ones that get, full blackout tattoos all of their body. They're looking for the next thing that you can't get elsewhere. It's like the people that
didn't even know what he was looking for. Like, he didn't know anything about Cenobites or anything like that. It's the doctor, it's the billionaires, the people you wouldn't necessarily think would be looking for something like this, who are the people who are like, yeah, show me.
Yeah, and like that, and so it doesn't, and so in that way, like, we get the Cenobites, sure. We don't get a small contained story. And I'm sorry, the whole 13 ghosts, this house is a trap thing, like, fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like listen, that is a very well thought out plot point in a totally different movie. Like,
yep.
And I think that's what ultimately ends up hindering this, is that it's trying too much to be a regular horror movie instead of doing what a great Hellraiser movie does, which is kind of toy between the lines of like, is this real? Is this not? It's supposed to feel almost lucid in its presentation. Like Hellbound is the most lucidly nightmarish film to watch, because none of it feels coherent. The whole setting of that mental, like even the opening scene where you have this dirty bedroom of like, and this like that mattress, and like, like it's just so gross, and like everything about this movie feels so polished. And I think that's kind of where it ends up, to me, like, again, as someone who loves the original Hellraiser and the aesthetic of it, is because I appreciate that you see just enough of the Cenobites to want more, but you also get this brutality and this sexuality that just is totally vacant here. And I think a lot of that has to do with the whole idea of like what are these people actually looking for? Like, we know this billionaire is a bad person, but he just wanted extra sensual pleasure. Like, we get no inclination this person's.
Well, it's the same thing that the doctor wanted in Hellraiser 2. It's like he heard about these things and he's like, I want to know. Like, I want to know what's beyond the realm of possibility. And granted, in the second one, he's a doctor, so he deals with like human physiology, and like you can point to him as someone who like knows everything about the human body and wants to know more. Yeah, in this one, it is kind of just like, I'm rich, I have everything, let's do this.
For the man who has everything, get him a Lynette configuration kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
But to that end, like Dr. Chenard in Hellbound, he doesn't start that way. He sees a body come out of a mattress and kills and eats somebody else. He's converted. At that point, he's like, I need to figure out where the hell that came from and how I can get like, and in that way, he uses the patients to get him access to the Cenobites. That sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Hulu's Hellraiser. Like, and so I say this all to say, like, I enjoyed this for as much as I enjoyed this for what it is. It's the best Hellraiser sequel since Bloodline, for my money.
I was gonna say, like, those three rules that you just listed for a good Hellraiser movie, Bloodline flies in the face of all of them, and yet you still rank it as your favorite.
Yes, because hypocrisy is my middle name. But but the thing is, Bloodline to me only worked because it actually pulls off what it's trying to, and it has some extremely redeeming, like, the space parts of Hellraiser are by far the weakest parts. But the good news part about Bloodline is it spends the least amount of time in space. It actually spends most of its time in, it introduces also an outstanding character in Angelique, who like is just so like, she feels like something Clive Barker wrote. She's this highly sexualized, almost incubus type or sorry, succubus type woman, incubus, succubus type woman who is strangely like I don't think she's attractive, but I know she's not unattractive. Like there's something drawing. She has a presence, and in the same way that like in some ways like a lot of the design of these Cenobites looks very much like how Angelique looks. Particularly like the peeled back
Yeah,
skull
yeah,
cap.
definitely some female Cenobite vibes in there. No Butterball, but
No,
maybe sequel. Who
and
knows?
you know what? I will give them a lot of credit for going full Hellraiser in the last 20 minutes. Like I think that that was a bold choice that you would not have been able to do. Um, I guess that this was probably going theatrical. I don't think they would have let them go with that kind of ending because it just gets kind of weird. But it also implies kind of wrongly to what Hellraiser 3 does is that you can defeat these things. And like that's the part that gets to me is like if there was a weakness all along, like, oh, you mean just by making some metal grate that it's just gonna stop them?
Well, it stops them, but Hellraiser 3 doesn't even kill them. It just sends them back to hell.
Yeah.
Like it's a stopgap. 4 actually kills them, which I mean, at that point you're in space and like light doesn't work like that. But
Yeah.
let's go with it.
Take the better with the bitter. I mean, ultimately, when you try like, ending a slasher, trying to kill a slasher of any kind is always a fool's errand because, and I can't think of very many slash movies that have ended in a satisfactory way except for the original like Halloween or the original Friday the 13th, like the first of every entry. Like I can't think of many sequels that have extremely satisfying conclusions. H2O actually has a really satisfying conclusion. Take that back.
I think we should make this the topic of another show because I can absolutely think of some that at least when I first saw them, I was incredibly satisfied. Even though knowing that there would be others in the future, I was like, God, if this is where it ends, that's great.
That might be another topic, but I could think of 3: Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp.
What an ending.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, no, that's true. Well,
it is an ending.
It is an ending. We should do this as another topic because that is, yeah, I have opinions.
Yeah.
Coming out.
Yeah. Well, it's good for us to have opinions on these things, especially when they don't always line up. So if you had to give like out of 5, what's your letterbox score for Hellraiser, Hulu's Hellraiser?
I think I have it as 3. I was thinking 3.5, but yeah, 3. Once again, never been the biggest Hellraiser fan, but I was very impressed. And I think if they do a sequel, it should be the same team of David Bruckner, Ben Collins, and Luke Petrosky. I mean, they did the Night House, and then you can tell that they're sitting on a fountain of ideas. They just need to have the go ahead and the right script, and I think they can come up with something good.
I've had the best idea for a Hellraiser sequel for 2 years, and no one's made it yet. You want it, you can hit me in the DMs. But I think you'd be surprised. I gave it 3.5 out of 5. Upon a rewatch, I might score it lower, but I think part of this reaction comes from the fact that I was just really excited to see a pretty decent Hellraiser movie. Like it's
was so low.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that really is what it has going. Like it had nowhere to go but up, and it did that. It definitely beat out any expectation that I had, which again, very little, because when you've been pummeled by so much mediocrity in this, I mean, of all the franchises, the Hellraiser franchise has probably some of the worst sequels of all time.
Let us not get Children of the Corn, but
there's not as many.
When I mentioned that, you forgot that there were so many Children of the Corn sequels because you blocked them out because those 2 were just like money cows for the Weinsteins. Yeah. And they can go fuck themselves, and we get our franchises back. So great.
Yeah, and give us Dogma, please. Stop holding on to that. That needs a proper Blu-ray release.
My special edition DVD, never getting rid of it. Not give me a 4K.
Yeah, we need a 4K of that one. But yeah, Hellraiser, Hulu. I applaud the swings that it took, even if it didn't hit all of them. And I'm glad that they let them make a genuine Hellraiser movie and not like 7 with Cenobites.
That was ever actually a thought. But
Well, on to our next kind of topic. This might not take as much time as Hellraiser, but I gotta say, I'm still thinking about it, and I'm probably gonna watch it again before the end of the month, just
oh
to see
yeah,
how I feel about it, and also just to try and take it in a little bit more. But when it comes to Halloween watches, um, I think we both approach this a little bit differently, and I think that'll make for some interesting listing here, which is explain a little bit how you approached your list, and then I'll talk about mine. These are our top three, by the way, Halloween watches that we watch every spooky season.
yeah. I mean, I these are just ones that I always break out, just in October. Uh, yeah, it's like an October cannot go by without me watching these films.
It's like the
And
now this is Halloween of Lowell's favorite horror movies.
yeah, and I mean, honestly, like I didn't know if we were gonna have the caveat of top three Halloween watches, except for John Carpenter's original Halloween. I just figured that was a given. But if it's not a given, if it is a given, I will replace it. I can do that like that. And if it's not, then yeah, John Carpenter's Halloween. If it's October and you're not watching John Carpenter's Halloween, what's wrong with you? Are you
Yeah.
watching Rob Zombie's Halloween? Are you okay? Do you need to lie down?
Maybe some water. Definitely stay hydrated. If you're choosing the Rob Zombie Halloween over the Carpenter one, there I can give you the name of a hotline to call. But
I don't know if anyone chooses it over. I mean, maybe that's
there are some people out there who will die on that hill too. There are people who say, I will take that.
let them, let them. But I will say I have watched. I always do the 31 days of Halloween where I watch 31 horror movies in October. And sometimes I will throw a Rob Zombie one in there. I throw different Halloween movie entries in there from time to time, but I will throw a Rob Zombie Halloween one or Halloween two in there and just see what happens.
Yeah.
But they are not making my top three.
Yeah, it's like it's like taking a pill you found on the ground. It could be great, it could be terrible, but I think so. I think we can give John Carpenter's Halloween 1978 a pass on this one, and saying that was a given for me when I made my list. It's like this is the most. Yeah, it's like watching A Christmas Story on Christmas or Elf for some people. I love Elf, but miss me with all this. It's better than Christmas Story bullshit. I mean, Jingle All the Way is better than Elf, if you ask me. But
that's millennial nonsense. That's
yeah.
not real.
Yeah, sit down, my fellow millennials on that one. But
no one is insulting Elf, but saying it's better than A Christmas Story. Let's just breathe.
Yeah, watch your tone. That's all I gotta say. Yeah. Watch your tone and keep your leg lamps out of my purview. But
house.
Yeah, go back to the bum kisses. But there's so I took an approach of what are the movies that I'd like to watch during this time of year that may or may not have some relationship to the actual season, because I do find like Halloween, much like Christmas to that extent, is the chance to watch some of your favorite movies that you may not get a chance to watch, or maybe don't find another reason to watch any other time of the year. But I think that's also because we consume so much content nowadays that finding time for your favorites is somewhat of a luxury when you're trying to see everything and anything that's coming out. So I tried to take a slightly like, these are some favorites that I like to put on the season that make me feel good or elicit that fall vibe. I didn't put mine in any particular order. But what's your first kind of must watch during the spooky season, and why?
Hocus Pocus. It's the why for all of them is because it's just what I've done, because they just scream Halloween to me.
Tradition.
Yeah, exactly. Hocus Pocus, set on Halloween, and it's just like a great movie from childhood that maybe isn't so great looking back on it, but the things that work about it still absolutely work about it. Yeah, just
what'd you think about the second one?
I liked it. I was like, and it's one of those, I'm sure you went into this with Hellraiser where you're just, you know what, it doesn't
just
even
be
have
good.
Yeah, or like it doesn't even have to be good. Just don't suck. Just don't don't waste my time or think that you're wasting the time of the people who came back to do this. And it didn't. I
Yeah.
was fulfilled. It was what I needed it to be. It wasn't amazing, but it was the second Hocus Pocus movie, and it was fine. And I laughed, and I enjoyed it, and it was great. That's all.
I'm not as close to the Hocus Pocus franchise as you are, but I will say
Franchise now, yeah,
it is a franchise now, I
yeah.
guess. But I enjoyed it as well. I've seen the Sanderson sisters. They are still the best part about the movie.
Oh yeah,
Like
they are.
them just chewing up scenery is still,
Yeah.
and the Roombas, like that's the best running joke that
That was
they
great.
could possibly muster on Disney Plus. So yeah, I can totally. I mean, the wife and I watch Hocus Pocus every year without fail. So I can definitely see that. My number three is Nightbreed, and not because it's a Halloween movie necessarily, but think about Halloween, think about costumes, and talk about some of the best costumes ever committed to celluloid. They are in Nightbreed. There's an entire book I have about just the different creature designs that they made for that movie, many of which didn't even make it into the final film, or the theatrical version at least. It's just a movie that like feels spooky. Like it's weird. It doesn't really, it's like most Clive Barker movies, they don't make tons of sense on face value, but you go along with them because they're visually just arresting. And Nightbreed is just that. I mean, there's so much about it that works, and it has some of the best dialogue. What's it called, monologue, where he catches that guy where he catches Boone in the cemetery, and he's like, "No, you're not Nightbreed. You're just meat." God, what is it? He says like God, Dorothy, there Oz is on their side of the rainbow, God is an astronaut, and Midian is where the monsters live. Like, it's just a movie that just oozes cool, and it makes me. And as far as like seeing really cool creature designs, there's very few movies that I think hold a candle to Nightbreed, there.
Totally.
So, what's your number two?
2007s or 2010s, because I guess it was shelved for a bit. But Michael Doherty's Trick or Treat.
Mm.
I love me a Halloween. I love me a film about Halloween, and it's anthology, and it's just like it's little bite-sized pieces of candy that you can enjoy. And I think I've thought about this, and I think it might be the most consistently great horror anthology. Like, I mean, Creepshow is like the daddy of it, but even Creepshow can feel a little long in the tooth sometimes. But like, no segment in Trick or Treat is like much like lesser than another. It's all pretty even, and it's all pretty solid. And yeah, it's just also another great horror comedy. Amazing cast. Like,
Yes.
oh my god, just yeah, it always gets a turn, and my Sam Funko Pop stays out year round.
I mean, that movie is apothecary. Like, that movie is just mysticism to me, because it is. So I have one of my few bragging rights is I actually got to see Trick or Treat in a theater before, because at the time I lived in LA, and I had been reading about how there might be a screening of it, and there was, and I happened to get tickets to it and happened to line up and be in line fast enough to see it. So I was able to see it in a theater years before it would come out, and I still think it's one of like I don't know. It is the most Halloween movie next to John Carpenter's Halloween, and you're so right that there's not a bad segment in it. Some of the segments are so good that they're even like it makes up for some others, like the whole rock quarry. Like, that's my favorite one. That's just so good and so creepy, and so well done. But
Ryan Cox, that's my favorite.
oh, that's a good. Well, also the opening.
For me, it's never usually the segment that comes later on. It's usually one of the first segments, but that's like the last one, and it's the apotheosis of the movie. It's just great. Candy bar, yeah.
The way it all connects together too, like there's very few anthology movies that do that well, that connect all those dots And it doesn't overcomplicate it, because it just says, hey, this is all taking place in this town at this moment. And fuck yeah for that. So Trick or Treat is a great choice. Mine actually does occur on Halloween for number 2 is Night of the Demons. Night of the Demons is just fun. That, like, to me, this is one of the most 80s horror movies, not just literally, but because of just everything about it. It's got Linnea Quigley, which is, you can't have a horror movie in the 80s without Linnea Quigley. It's got one of the coolest and still to this day best VHS, best cover art boxes of all time.
Hey, I never saw it until Scream Factory put it out, but yeah, that's you remembered that cover art in Blockbuster.
It's so good that the sequels just do the same thing, just change the color scheme. So that's how iconic it is.
I always wanted to see the sequels. Didn't Brian Trenchard Smith do the second one?
Yes, the second one's quite good.
Okay.
Third one's okay. It's not great.
Okay.
But the second one is actually pretty decent.
Okay.
And it's just a fun movie. It's a fun haunted house movie meets demons. And there's so much about it that just like is so explicitly 80s. The breast beast scene, you know, the pig monster. I mean, all of it just reeks of like Kevin Yeager, like of Kevin Yeager being Kevin Yeager. And
did you work on that? Was that him?
I'm pretty sure, but now I'm questioning myself. So let me look this up.
I know it was directed by Kevin Tenney, so you still got your.
There's a Kevin in there somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, great makeup effects. Just really, really fun.
Maybe not. It is Kevin Tierney. But either way, fucking fun movie, and just doesn't get old for me because it's just so in and out. I think it's like less than 90 minutes too. So it's the perfect, just like get in, get out, have a good. It's almost like Return of the Living Dead 2 in that way. Just instead of it being zombies, it's demons, and you know, take the same types of characters. Voila. So that's number 2. I think I know your number 1 is. I think I might know.
Well, I mean, so okay, yes, John Carpenter's Halloween. That's a given. But I also like I said, I like to throw in a Halloween sequel here and there. But I tell you, one of the things that I've started to do the past few years, and I was worried that this might dilute it a little bit for me, but it hasn't, is I like to watch a double feature of the original Carpenter's Halloween with the Halloween 2 from 1981. Since it does take place on the same night and it tries to keep continuity as much as possible, despite Jamie Lee's horrendous wig. It stands next to the original. I mean, nothing stands next to the original because it is the top of the mountain, but you know, you can almost imagine the first production meeting for Halloween 2 being like, all right, I don't know why we're doing a sequel to Halloween. You don't know why we're doing a sequel to Halloween, but we're getting paid to do a sequel to Halloween, and we're not going to fuck this up. Get me Dean Cundey. And that's what happened. And you know, and people always say, oh, they're just like chasing the trends that Halloween inspired. But to me, I always thought that Halloween 2 was being like, no, this is how it's done. You're all excited about Friday the 13th. Let me show you what a real 80s slasher movie could be. And it's still, I mean, it is a little bloodier than the original Halloween, but compared to what else came out in the 80s, it's still relatively bloodless. And it's creepy, and I love the whole, you get like the town flipping out as all of this is going on. That happened later again in Halloween Kills. Like, it all started here. And I just love that like aspect. And like, you know, even when it cuts back to Loomis and the sheriff like running around figuring out what's happening, that's still compelling. And honestly, I think that movie would be held in a much higher regard if it wasn't for this brother sister twist. Like, if you just took that out somehow, like, it would be much higher on people's favorite horror sequels list. And it's pretty high as it is, but like, you know, it doesn't get as much love as it should.
I would agree with that. I think Halloween 2 is such like a nasty, it's just, all right, let's make Halloween 1, but let's make it meaner and darker. And I love the sound, like the score, like the way that Carpenter kind of riffed on his own theme in Halloween 2. That
It
sounds a
was
little bit
mostly
more.
Alan Howarth, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. But I like that riff that he did on it, kind of making it more into beeps rather than like chords.
Mhm.
Um, and hospitals are creepy, just
Yeah.
outright. And it does have one of the best death scenes in the Halloween franchise. And that, first of all, I did not. I'm assuming that must be some sort of physical therapy spa that they were getting into.
I
Um,
think so. Yeah.
but it's a great death scene. You can really feel the heat. Um, and yeah, that's a fun one. I'm similar to you in that like I actually picked a Halloween sequel for my top spot, giving
Also,
JC's a
real quick, just one
yes.
thing to talk about. One of the best chase scenes in all of horror. Like that the final bit where he kills the nurse and then he chases her through the basement of the hospital and up. It's when she's like drugged out. It's just, once again, still doesn't stand next to the original because nothing does, but like, God, it's good.
You actually feel like Jamie Lee's really hurt. Like the way she sells the limp, it's pretty believable. And you actually like, even to this day, watching it, you're still kind of like, hope you don't get caught, like because
Yeah.
it just looks. There's a lot of pain in like, it's a pain. Like I don't know. It's kind of like I recently rewatched Five Cream on a plane, um, and I haven't softened on it much, but I do. And even though I still have major issues with the hospital scene in general, I still love that they aped that right from Halloween 2. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like did a lot of the same stuff. So yeah, I give it that. But my first one is Halloween 3, um, which is like most people our age, I'll just say, probably wasn't my favorite when you would have asked me when I was younger because it didn't have Michael Myers in it. But as with all things, age and time give us hopefully some wisdom, and which allows us to change our opinions and how we feel about certain things. And Halloween 3 might be the ultimate underdog as far as franchise sequels go, in that it continues to build up momentum and steam. And I'll be honest in saying it wasn't until about like 6 years ago that I caught wind of like how great it is, because I just avoided it for so long because of it not being a Michael Myers Halloween movie. And the more I watch it, the better it gets. It's so and it's so mean. And I think that's what I really like about Halloween 3 is that the other ones don't necessarily capture as well. Is that there's something like really fucked up about that premise of we're going to make a mask company that is specifically going to target children and then turn their heads into giant buckets of bugs. Like
Mm-hmm.
for no other reason, just because like their motivations about their
It's
praying
just
to
a
like an altar
ritual.
god. Yeah, it's a ritual. It's just that's what we do, right? It's like we watch horror movies in October and we sacrifice kids, to our pagan god. That's just what you do.
Love that Donald Cochran monologue, The Hills Run Red, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's fun. It feels like Halloween. The countdown to Halloween is always fun. That song, just you can't
Mm-hmm.
get it out of your head. It's so simple. It's good in a weird way. And I think of all the, I just got my Scream Factory 4K of the final three of the Michael
Uh,
Myers Halloweens.
I'm curious about the bonus features for that. I know there's nothing else for H2O, but not enough to pick them up. But I am curious because they have new stuff for Resurrection and Curse. So you'll let me know. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I actually Curse is one I've been meaning to revisit because I do think if there is as obvious of a statement as this is, if there is a franchise that begs to be watched during October, it is absolutely Halloween. No matter which ones you watch, what order you watch them in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think they just do all of them clearly speak to the season, but all in very different ways. I'm going to leave Halloween 5 out of this, but there's a very distinct kind of way Haddonfield looks in all of those movies that it's never
Yeah.
the same, and it's always kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't go wrong with the Halloween franchise. Well, I take that back. You can go wrong with the Halloween franchise, but this also is a nice kind of conclusion to what will ultimately be our next kind of bonus episode this month, which will be a discussion on Halloween Kills, which are ends. Shit, we're on the ends one, aren't we?
Yeah.
Which we're hoping to get a few of our contributors at Macabre Daily to join us for a much more robust conversation talking about not just the final entry in the DDG trilogy, but also how is it overall? What are your expectations going into Halloween Ends? Just seeing as it comes out
Um,
5 days from now.
I'm always highly skeptical of the last in any trilogy. I guess you can say it's four movies, including the original, but no, for David Gordon Green and the Jamie Lee resurgence, it is a trilogy. Not many good third films in a trilogy out there, or at least ones that don't really land. But I have a feeling that the things that were lacking in Kills, they were saving for Ends. I just because Kills, you get the feeling that they just wanted to make their crazy, insane slasher movie, and that's what Kills really is. It doesn't really advance anything that much. So I have a feeling that we're that I really hope Halloween does end in terms of this continuity. Let's put it that way, because if you leave the door open for a sequel after this one, I'm going to be upset. Just reboot it again down the line, please, Malik. I know you're gonna have Michael Myers forever, but just once, give us a definitive ending for all of this. But I do, from what I gather and what I've read in interviews, David Gordon Green seems to be heavily hinting towards that. So I'm going to go with it. But whether or not it sticks the landing, the ending to the original 2018 Halloween is so far the best ending to any Halloween film aside from the original. And it is a great bookend for the original. So if you just watch the 78 one and the 2018 one, that's it, closed circuit, which I used to say about 1, 4, and H2O, or no, 1, 2, and H2O, or 1, 2, and 4. If you just watch those, you have two great Halloween trilogies that end in very different places. But yeah, it's a choose your own adventure, and I will continue to do so.
Yeah, I feel like H2O took the best possible way to end Michael Myers, unfortunately. And I
That I
feel
it's so easy to just sorry to keep interrupting, but I do love that if you want that to be the end of Halloween, it can be. Just I resurrection. What's that? She cut off his head. What are you talking about? I mean, yeah, I'll never forget that movie theater moment. I don't think anyone who saw it in the theater will, but anyway.
no, that was not a movie that has not aged well, but
Yeah.
still has some pretty effective parts. I'm going into kill or end just hoping that it does end. Like evil must die to that night. Like it's because there is no more story to be told that's of any worth at this point, and um, I'm going in with such lowered expectations because of Halloween Kills that I'm actually looking forward to enjoying it probably more than I would have if Halloween Kills was much better. And I don't hate Halloween Kills.
It's a disappointment.
Yeah, it's just like I know that this isn't going to resolve anything. So it's like it's like treading water. It's like I know exactly why I don't know why I'm doing this, but we have to do this to not drown.
It's a
But I'm curious to see how despite it all, I do have quite a bit of faith in David Gordon Green as a filmmaker, and I continue to enjoy things that him and oh my God, what's his name? Yeah, Danny McBride do. Like The Righteous Gemstones is probably one of the funniest shows on television. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to make gobs of money, so financially, it's going to be a success, which means we're probably going to get another Halloween of some kind in like 5 years. Or like something. But as long as the mask isn't the source of the evil, and the mask doesn't persist, that will piss me off to no end. But you know what? I'm not even gonna think about that. I'm going in positive
not the
minded.
person evil. It's just what wakes him up. But anyway,
Yeah,
it,
Michael,
that
podcasters brought you a mask.
that honestly, I liked. That made sense to me. But it's not. It's not going to be we burn the mask and then he burns. That's silly.
Yeah,
So
as long as it's not the
that,
mask persists, he doesn't, and then some kid puts it on, and then all of a sudden you get the Halloween music, and
yeah,
here's where we are. But who knows? We will all find out in the next by the end of this week, probably. Lowell, I'm sure I'll talk to you for that episode, but until then, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
And ma ha ha. But this has been, if you want to check us out on Macabre Daily, follow our Instagrams. Lowell, you're at Lowell
Deadpan.
Yeah. And at Macabre Maddie. And between now and then, be good, stay safe, and watch horror movies. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.